I am live. I'm drmike.org. I should probably fix the background a bit better, but I haven't really thought about using this as a backdrop except for the alien DJ, which would be a whole nother identity, right? Yeah, I'm drmike.org. If you don't know me, I'm a social scientist, and I've been practicing doing these live streams recently because I have a new book coming out. And at the time you're watching this, it's probably a series of titles. And so my main purpose, though, in just really getting on before I get on a series of calls is the things I'll be talking about. And I have a podcast called mikesmastermind.com, along with other shows that I'm producing for the podcast channel launch, which you would be invited to participate. You can looking for people who want to be guests, want to start a podcast, will help you. You have an existing podcast, migrate it over to podcastchannel.com. So lots of potential and things going on. It's kind of overwhelming because I have this book called Why Impeach coming out in just 2 weeks. So I'm procrastinating right now. I just need to do the final passover in the last chapter, which I did, but I want to look at it one more time because a comma might be out of place. So I've procrastinated almost 3 weeks. However, it will get done and out before around the 4th of July, and that's where things count and matter. And I would love for you to check it out at whyimpeach.com. Other news and updates is really about the idea that whether you consider the title controversial, it's simply the title whyimpeach.com talking about on a grander social philosophy type scale, the world that we're in right now and how we're dealing with current reality. And there could be a lot of debate about alternative facts or whatever we perceive things to be. And yet, if we don't confront it in a way to better understand it and to understand our own analysis of it, like what is our impression? How are we feeding back into what I just wrote about in the ARF, the arena ratio field? So let me talk about that. So it's probably been a couple of years now. And how that occurred was, as a social psychologist, social entrepreneur, I'm looking, I'm not looking, I'm sort of sensing the world that we're in. I do write about this. You can also see this online called Welt Slosh, WELTSCHLOSS.com. The Welt Slosh are two German words I just kind of merged together. Welt stands for the world, and they have a whole philosophy about this in Germany, or Austria, and sort of German thinking, maybe some Swiss, I don't know. But the idea here is that we could have a sense of the world that we're dwelling in and have a conscious deliberation. Something could be revealed from our, you could say, participatory perspectives, where we honor and share versus just going, and of course that could occur. It's sort of, there needs to be a sensibility that allows us to sort of come back to earth. At the same time, we can be lofty in the dream that we can all get along and we can live in community. And the way that we are together makes a difference. We become more as one, at peace, and allowing for our ability to sort of transcend what I call DIS, because people say someone dissed you. This is something we need to talk about, and that disorientation. So what I'm really actually describing is something that's called metasphere. There's something that we agree that is described in the sciences as social climate, and we can define social climate a number of ways, and where we can interpret our felt sense of reality. And in that way, we can perhaps come together in a conscious community conversation and talk about the space that we're in. What does it feel like? What's your sensation about it? So for more clarity purposes, rather than just calling it a atmosphere, I'd rather call it a metasphere. Because metaphorically speaking, I had this idea before Facebook changing to meta. It's like, no, it's logical in the way that we can define a felt space. And this is what the ARF is, arena ratio field, the ARF. And how this occurred, there are some really great stories in philosophy and science where someone's poking a fire and then they get this epiphany. Mine was just taking a walk in Heartland, Wisconsin, around the block. I think it was a pretty nice day. And when I get to this one corner, I'll see this dog. Now, he used to have a long leash. I think they have electric fence around him now, but he's got a big bark and he knows you're coming. And so it's like, all right, there's the ARF. And I'm thinking about this, like, as I get closer to it, how his sensibility is, what do I represent to him? If I had a ball, because he kind of knows I could play with him, that was what he was doing. But otherwise, he's barking to protect his space, or whatever dogs do. I'm not a dog mind reader, but you can talk to the dog whisperer and tell you what he's trying to say. For me, it's that sensation that I'm walking into an arena, and there's a field. It's a ratio that I can determine something about. So let me just dive into it a little bit, because some people are going to go, what? So first off, if you know some of my writing, drmike.org, I've written about the IGO, which basically is me naming the selfie of the mind. If you follow me, I go in my imagination, I picture myself and see myself live. I go, man, I need a shave. But whatever it would be, for Joe Bogus, we wear funny hats and there's a presentation, different podcasts. How I would appear as Dr. Mike is a sort of presentation of something, right? So whatever that experience is for you, the hope is that it could be something profound in the way that it's meaningful and there's something valuable being presented. And in that, we find a greater sense of connectivity and purpose. It's a lofty goal. Yet if I'm going to intend communication to happen, other than the trivia and the weather and checking in, like how you doing, we should really be talking about how we're being as a species. And then we can elaborate more on what this outcome is if we can recognize ourselves in the metasphere. What are our arena ratio fields, right? The ARF. What is it that you're sensing or hearing or barking about? So we'd be awake to our own sensations, our own thinking. We call this a sense of awareness. So what it is that I'm sensing and to be attuned to it. So now if I'm processing any thinking, I'm aware of what it is that I'm thinking rather than the thinking having me, or I'm just going off in fantasy land, which is okay if that's what you want to do. At least be aware that you're making something, molehills out of nothing perhaps. And now you're on the attack or offended. And it's all sort of made up, at least in the way that you recognize it. You have awareness. And this is what I describe as the flight you take every day. The flight you take every day is TWA. So I have this first vestibular sense of what I'm feeling or sensing, and what is it that I'm thinking? And then the words, what is it that I'm saying about it? Words that are wise or whoa, especially with people around you. And that is my act, or what I'm actualizing in the way that attributes to whatever this experience is. And this ARF is a wave or a sense, can be quite large or quite small, right? Because it's arena ratio. And in that field or that dimension, how I'm interpreting my reality is something that's worth considering. At least that's what I'm proposing in my work as a social scientist, drmike.org. So for one writing that you could look at for free right now is called Phenom, PHENOM book.com, phenombook.com, PHENOM book.com. And I short phrased it to mean the here and now. The phenom is this here and now. It is phenomena. And there is a social science and a philosophy called phenomenology. And the Phenom book just takes it apart because I need to know it for myself, and not that I am any expert, know it at all. I'm just curious. How can we departmentalize the experiences that we're having? I also have a writing called BIDEC, BIDECK, .masstrance.com. And the BIDEC is our filtering process. So how it can be attuned to our beliefs and our intentions and our decision making and how we're participating in our quote unquote quasi world of, the way that we're dwelling, it's what we're making it. And that sort of becomes our interpretation of reality, whether we could agree or argue. It is still based in a projection of things that I've described as the ego, because I go in my imagination, this is my projection, and that which is projected out there is the mass trance, or the matrix, the Maya, whatever you want to call it. Because it's a projection of mind. And we need to understand that we're interpreting things and labeling it, and at least to be conscious of it. So it can be a deliberate decision or interpretation that is acceptable to you, or at least is released from the confines of labeling, or what I describe as cringe. And if you want to know more about cringe, because aren't you curious about cringe, go to cringefactors.com. So we begin to awaken out of our self-imposed ego identity. I go in my mind, this projection of self, and this identity ID is not just your passport or your driver's ID. It's your internal dialogue. ID stands for internal dialogue. What is it you're saying about something or yourself or other people, what you think they're saying? And to be aware of your thoughts, words, and actions about it. That's the flight you take every day. So if there's ever going to be an awakening of a humanity, for us to have that desirable, designer, sustainable future that would be idyllic, ideal, if we can't even have a conscious community conversation about it, we failed. We failed as a species, as a humanity, in our friendship and fellowship relationship with each other. So I'm all about building community, and how we can rise to the occasion is to be a bit more consciously attuned to how I'm ultra being present. And this would be the new philosophy that we would engage, an expression on a high level that is considerate, what's good for the whole. And there's check-in in this process, right? Because we're evolving a conscious concept of what evolution would mean for our species and for the entirety of the planet, right? So having some kind of conversation, whether it's from that religious dimension or some ancient tradition, or all would be welcome. It's really a social scientific perspective to look at where things are. And whether it comes from different opinions or data, interpretations of experience, it's really kind of a cool thing to have a dialogue about, because we're divining, we're filtering through the cringefactors.com, class, race, income, individuality, intrigue of, dimensions that are filtered through nationality, gender, and expressions of economic status or ethnicity, combined with your age or your political perspective, or you have a religious filter point of view. It's quite interesting to deconstruct things in the way that you yourself become a bit more aware of your own thoughts, words, and actions, the TWA, the flight you take every day. And that then informs this art field, because we're in the expression of this. I'm in it, and my interpretations, right, of the arena, the game, and the world that I'm playing in. Like Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage. Well, what stage of consciousness are we participating in right now? All fire and fury and, fisting? Or is it a fine dwelling? Weld-com would be of interest to you, because it's a philosophical sense of how am I ultra being present. And phenombook.com takes you through just what phenomenology is and how we can begin to understand better the structures of our experience. And then this ultimate book, after I finish what I'm currently working on, whyimpeach.com. Some people go, what was that one? Whyimpeach.com? Because it's a necessity. You have the Medusa head. I mean, it's not all the puppet strings, but would take care of a lot of things, and understanding it just simply from the why perspective, so we can wake up from the mass trance, is really important. So at least it initiates a community conversation, hopefully something that's conscious in the consideration of who I am and the way that I'm present. That's what the ultra being philosophy would be about. And I hope it's worthy of your consideration, no matter your political dimensions, what side of the aisle, or what frontal cortex, or lobe, or left, right brain you are. It's a holistic approach to consider that, hey, we're in this experience together. How can we best appreciate it, come to a fine understanding of our dwelling that then defines this ARF, right? The arena ratio field that I'm participating in, or find myself present to. Yeah, hopefully it's something deep and profound. And this would inform a new ultra being philosophy. Really, you could say a self-liberation movement, helping people get out of their stuck stories and doing it elegantly, so they're not made to feel wrong, but sort of recognize, like an epiphany, they can get out of it, right? And that's the awakening. We're not judging it anymore, other than that, hey, maybe you let that one go, but hopefully you can make up for it, and if someone is owed an apology, or you've got a debt to pay, come on, be responsible and get back to people in a timely way. Keep your word, be conscious of what it is that you're thinking and saying and acting, right? TWA, thoughts, words, and you're conscious of your act, what you're actualizing. All right, these are things to consider in the ARF arena ratio fields, how you're acting and participating and having a sense of this. And there'll be impacts, right, attached to this. So these are all great areas of exploration. You can find more of my work at mikesmastermind.com. That's the podcast, mikesmastermind.com, and doing some live streams. And there'll be a new drmike.org reworking of that site. Invite you to community conversations, and for us really to be able to get along better and to communicate virtually and in person, and the way that we can support conscious community conversations. This is where the work is going. So hopefully some epiphany or upliftment can occur. It's a lofty ambition, I know, and yet I can't think of a better North Star, or divining direction that would allow us to unfold in the way that we need to, consciously, right? So it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, from struggle and strife and survival means to hopefully self-actualized awareness that then at the pinnacle peak is transcendence. And this would be ultra being present, ultra being loving. And this is the consideration, the contemplation that I call UBE3 is the formula, the long-lasting legacy I would pass along to you to share with your friends, neighbors, and your progeny, your future generations. UBE3 is simply ultra being, attuned, loving again, ultra being present in a way that you are an excellent example of this enlightenment as you're able to express it, experience it, experiment with it, explore it. I'm drmike.org. I'm Jivamukti to you too. Love that's present. Thank you. drmike.org.